Move on to the next news from United States. Voters head to the polls in the United States in 15 states and 1 territory for what are known as the Super Tuesday primaries. It appears current U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are poised for a rematch of the 2020 election. VOA correspondent Chris Cascuejo joins us live from a polling place in Northern Virginia and joined outside Washington, D.C. with more. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good to be with you on this rainy Tuesday morning from Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah, Chris, why Super Tuesday is so important in the nominating process for the 2 major U.S. parties?
Well, Super Tuesday is called Super Tuesday because so many delegates are at stake. 1/3 of the delegates for the nominating process for both parties' candidates are at stake on this day, so we could get a very good idea whether we will have a rematch between current President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. This is part of the nominating process. Each state makes its own rules for its primary. For example, some have what are called open primaries, in which a voter can choose a Republican or Democratic ballot regardless of their party affiliation. Others have closed primaries in which voting is limited to those who declare their party affiliation as Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, Chris, meanwhile, polls suggest that former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is significantly trailing former President Donald Trump in the state's voting in Super Tuesday primaries. Is she expected to drop out after the race after today?
Well, we'll have to see. It really depends on whether she wants to continue in this race and whether her big donors continue to back her, that she can still have a campaign staff to continue her campaign. Nikki Haley did win a primary over the weekend in Washington, D.C., but it was a very small primary, just only a handful of delegates, so it will prevent Donald Trump from sweeping the delegates on the way to the Republican nomination. Her victory, at least, the president is likely to pick up several hundred more delegates in this process today. But here's the challenge for Haley. States with the largest number of delegates, like California and Texas, have what are known as closed primaries, as I mentioned at the top of this report, in which only Republicans can vote in the primary. And Haley has enjoyed a lot of support from moderates and Democrats who've crossed over in what are called open primaries. So she's really facing an uphill battle here, and it's really up to her whether she wants to continue the race or not, considering she probably won't take home a lot of delegates today.
Yeah, in other hand, Chris, the U.S. Supreme Court handed Trump a legal victory Monday, and he'll be able to stay on the ballot in states that tried to rule him was ineligible based on his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. Can you explain any further?
Yeah, this has to do with a case out of Colorado from December where that state Supreme Court threw Trump off the ballot because they said that he was involved in insurrection, and that would make him ineligible under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Now, similar measures were adopted in states where the courts threw him out of the ballot in Maine and Illinois, but those decisions were put on hold regarding the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, which came down yesterday. Now, Trump's eligibility had been challenged by a group of voters in Colorado, but the Supreme Court is expected to rule in June on another case involving Trump, and that involves his claim that he has total immunity for any acts that he committed while president.
Chris, one last question. Current President Joe Biden is running virtually unopposed. Should we expect any surprises on the Democratic side for Super Tuesday?
Yeah, observers are going to be watching whether the protest movement that happened in Michigan in their primaries last week is going to take hold in some of the other states where voters have an undeclared or uncommitted option. In Michigan, 10,000 voters chose to vote uncommitted, and that was about 13% of the vote. And that was largely due to a large Arab American population in the suburb of Dearborn, and they're protesting the war in Gaza, and they don't approve of Biden's handling of the war in Gaza, specifically because the U.S. is so closely tied to Israel. But Another state where this protest effort could take root is Minnesota, which has a large Somali American population. Representative Ilhan Omar is actually from suburban Minneapolis, or from Minneapolis, and we'll see if that protest effort takes hold in Minnesota the way that it took hold in Michigan last week.
Well, thank you, Chris. Chris Cascuejo, VOA correspondent from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your information. Thank you for your time. Until next time.
Good to be with you.